Now, pro-democracy fighters are continuing their advance across Libya. They're now close to Muammar Gaddafi's hometown of Sirte. The latest reports say Gaddafi's troops are holding the rebels back. It's the stiffest resistance opposition forces have faced since their westwards push towards the capital. It started in Benghazi, which has remained firmly in rebel control since international airstrikes began 9 days ago. Well, on Saturday, they retook Aljazeera. By Sunday, they'd also seized the oil towns of Brega, Ras Lanuf and Bin Jawad. Now the rebels are outside Sirte. That's an important Libyan military base. They claim they now control Al-Hurriya, which is 70 kilometers east of Sirte. Well, in Misrata, reports pro-Gaddafi snipers are shooting people in the streets and rebels have lost control of part of the city. But the place that could yet become the biggest and bloodiest battleground is, of course, the capital, Tripoli. We'll get a live update from Libya in a moment. But first, Alan Fisher has all the latest developments.
This is where the rebel advance has stopped for the moment. These exclusive pictures were taken in An Nawafalaya near Sirte. There has been an exchange of fire, and in the distance on the hill, what appears to be pro-Gaddafi forces taking up position. It's the first real opposition the pro-democracy forces have faced in the past 24 hours. They've swept along the coast, claiming town after town. At each place there have been celebrations before the convoy moves on. There has been no fighting. Gaddafi forces have melted away, leaving behind weapons the rebels have gratefully snapped up. One of those involved in this surge says for many, taking Tripoli is now the only thing that matters.
They have like one faith. They want to do it. They want to go further. Doesn't matter what. Like a lot of people, they lost their family, they lost their friends, but they didn't have anything else. They need that stop. Like we can't handle it anymore.
There is no doubt the advance has been helped by the Allied airstrikes, which has destroyed some of the Libyan army's strength. State TV has been showing pictures of what it says was an Allied dawn attack on Saba, 700 kilometres south of Tripoli. It says residential areas were hit, a number of people injured. The Gaddafi government says NATO is taking sides.
The rebels, when they advance, in any location, when they advance, no one attacks them, no one mentions even that they were moving. Clearly the West, NATO, is taking sides on this civil conflict. It's illegal, hasn't been allowed or permitted by the Security Council resolution, and it's immoral.
Taking Sirte would be a significant and symbolic win for the rebels. It is Gaddafi's hometown. But pro-government soldiers are heading somewhere. And as these pictures show, the battle for Libya is far from over. Alan Fisher, Aljazeera.
Well, James Bays is on the front line with the advancing pro-democracy forces. He sent this update from Bin Jawad.
I spent the night in Benghazi. There, massive celebrations. People were letting off gunfire, celebratory gunfire throughout the night. As you come down the road, you hear different things from different people. The problem is that the opposition fighters have no communication with each other. The only communication they seem to have is word of mouth. One group of fighters going from one checkpoint in one town to the next and passing on the word. And I'm afraid it's a little like Chinese whispers. The information is getting lost in the process. So it is really a confused picture. But what we're piecing together is that there is some activity in Sirte, and certainly that opposition fighters have made some progress. They control an area beyond where I am in Bin Jawad, and they are trying to make their way and secure all of that road to Sirte.
James, you've been on the road heading westward with the rebels. Just talk us through your journey up to Bin Jawad, where you are now.
Yeah, I'll do that, Darren. Let me first give you the geography, if I can. Look that way. This is the long coastal road. You can see this is the road we're talking about. This is where most of the population live in Libya, along this coastal road. Benghazi in that direction, about 4 hours drive from here in Bin Jawad. Most of the places you pass are like this one, relatively small. The only business really is the oil industry here. Small places that are stops on the road for traffic passing through, beside the Mediterranean here. Actually, pretty beautiful scene. Beyond us there, that's the road that goes off to Sirte, eventually off to Tripoli. And all of the journey is on a road like this, a road that's seen in this section no fighting at all. Gaddafi's forces just fled from here. What is a problem for the opposition fighters, as I've been making the journey, and it's causing a problem for us as well, is that rather ironically, in a country that relies on its oil wealth, at the moment there's no fuel in the petrol station. If you go into town in Bin Jawad, you'll find that the petrol pumps aren't operating because there is no power here. So instead, they're actually getting bottles, plastic bottles and a bit of rope, and they're lowering them into the tank underneath the petrol station to get up fuel. It takes a long time. That's the only way fighters are able to get fuel to keep going along this road. And I think that is one of the problems, highlights one of the problems they face. They're very long lines of communications here, all the way from the Egyptian border in the east, from Tobruk, and all the way to here where we are in the centre of the Libyan coast. It's a long area now for the opposition fighters to control.
James Bayes talking to me earlier. Now, the Reuters news agency is reporting that forces loyal to Colonel Gaddafi have taken partial control of Misrata. An opposition spokesman is quoted as saying some areas of the city are under the Libyan leader's command. Well, a short while ago, I spoke over the phone with Muhammad Ali, an eyewitness to the fighting in Misrata. I asked him to describe what he was seeing there.
In Misrata, the murderous dictator's forces are still fighting in the city. We have random shelling, and we have the forces of the dictator trying to enter the city from the northwest point, but our youth fighters are managing to holding them up. His spokesmen keep going on television announcing ceasefires. I don't know what ceasefire is he talking about. He's still shelling Misrata, and his snipers in parts of the main street are wreaking havoc into and striking fear into the people of Misrata.
Are you seeing snipers shoot people?
Yes. Yes, sir. I am at the medical hospital. Cases of people being... we have 8 dead yesterday, shot by snipers. We have no deaths today, but we have many injuries. But it's just a matter of time until deaths starting arriving again.
Well, NATO is in the process of taking over the enforcement of the no-fly zone over Libya. Western nations, led by the United States, began the handover on Sunday. Well, NATO Secretary-General Anders Fogh Rasmussen spoke to Aljazeera's Paul Brennan in Brussels. He explained why the alliance has taken control of the campaign in the country.
For over a week since the military operation over Libya began, we've had effectively 2 operations running simultaneously. An allied operation led by France, the USA and Britain, and an increasingly high-profile NATO operation. Well, now, thanks to the decision made on Sunday night by NATO's North Atlantic Council, NATO will take charge. It'll take a couple of days. First of all, the no-fly zone will be taken control of by NATO. Eventually, by the middle of this week, NATO will take control of the defending of civilian populations. One thing that the Secretary-General, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, was at pains to stress when he spoke one-on-one with Al Jazeera today was that NATO will be utterly impartial.
NATO is impartial. We are there to implement fully the UN resolution, and the UN resolution aims at protecting civilians. We're there to protect civilians, and the UN mandate applies to both sides in this conflict. It is for the Libyan people to decide the future of Libya. We respect fully the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Libya. Our purpose is to protect civilians against any attack.
Well, that principle of impartiality, that rule that the NATO will only get involved in protecting civilian populations, well, of course, that sounds very clear-cut and simple. But in the reality of the complications of war, it's actually probably far from that. There are plenty of hypothetical problems being thrown up. Questions are being asked, not least, for example, with pro-democracy fighters approaching the town of Sirte. What happens if pro-Gaddafi forces retreat into the town and the pro-democracy forces pursue them into that civilian population? Will NATO be put into the position of having to attack pro-democracy fighters because of their avowed aim of protecting civilians? Well, the general that we spoke to earlier on today, he rather sidestepped that question. And it's fair to say that NATO really can't wait for tomorrow's political summit, which takes place in London on Tuesday, at which NATO hopes an overall political framework will be achieved. It will certainly give some guidance where, for the moment, the military commanders appear unsure as to what the overall political aims will be.
Well, Russia's foreign minister has criticised the international campaign in Libya. Sergei Lavrov says the coalition military action amounts to intervening in a civil war.
Reports are coming, and no one denies them, on coalition air force strikes against Gaddafi's columns of troops, and reports about the support of the actions of the armed insurgents. There is a clear contradiction here. We believe that interference of the coalition in the internal, as a matter of fact, civil war, has not been sanctioned by the UN Security Council resolution.
And Turkey, which long opposed NATO taking command of the international intervention in Libya, now says it will participate, but mainly in humanitarian operations. The Prime Minister, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, outlined Ankara's plans.
We've agreed on 3 missions with NATO so far. One of them is Turkey taking over the duty of humanitarian aid distribution from Benghazi airport. We've signed the agreement and this process has officially started. The second mission is the control of air zones. We said yes to that. And the third mission is we've agreed to our naval forces taking part in the control of the corridor between Crete and Benghazi.
Well, stay with Aljazeera for continuing coverage of the battle for Libya.